Welcome to day 9 of NaNoWriMo. This video I'm going to talk more about some of the rules to writing and why you should either follow them or choose to break them. Alright, so just right off the bat, rules to writing. Short answer, there really aren't any. More than anything, there are recommendations that publishers push for, or we have come to expect from the writing industry in general. In truth, it's really important to know what those rules are, or more what those recommendations are, so that when you choose to break them, you're doing so for a purpose and not just because you were ignorant to their existence. As a young author, or inexperienced author, I made a ton of mistakes by simply not knowing what I was supposed to be doing. By really knowing what you're doing, it can really make the difference in a good quality story. If you choose to break a rule, that's fine. But do it because you chose to do so and not because you didn't know that it was there for a purpose. So, I've written down a couple quick ideas of what rules there are. Really, I'm not going to go through the list. There's tons of videos out there on what the rules of writing are. Most of them are going to hit on the same topics. I recommend if you're really curious as to them, find one of those videos and get a quick short list. In truth, you'll learn most of these through experience anyway. Probably the biggest one that I've run across, I've had it told to me, I've heard other authors tell it to other people. That one is show, don't tell. And that's a big one and really confusing one for the simple fact that nobody really knows what it's about. You have to be able to identify the difference between showing and telling in order to correct it, but most people just spout off show, don't tell. They never tell you how to learn the difference between the two. For me, I have more decided that showing is whenever I am describing a situation through a character's eyes, and when I'm telling is when I'm narrating what's happening. And it's a subtle difference sometimes, but the difference is still there. The other thing is when they say show, don't tell, well, that's incorrect from the start. What you really need to understand is that there is a time and a place for both. You can't always show, and you shouldn't always tell. You need to figure out where that happy medium is between the two and learn to work with it. A lot of times whenever I'm starting out a chapter or a new segment or, I'm starting something out, I will start it off as telling so I can get the reader into the setting as quick as possible. And once I've got them in place, then I can jump to the showing where they are now experiencing the story through the character's perspective. Another thing is called head hopping. That is, basically it's where whoever is telling the story on the page is jumping back and forth between multiple characters' points of view. And the reason that one's considered a rule is it's very confusing for the reader to know whose perspective they are reading through. I mean, that's why books are so great in the first place. One, you can include a lot of detail, and two, you get to experience the world through somebody else's eyes. And anybody who's really gotten into a book can vouch that the emotions you feel in those stories are real. And a good author knows how to deliver those. But if you are head hopping between various characters, the reader is getting confused, they don't know where they're latched onto, and it's just a really quick way to pull a reader out of the story. Another one that I've been told is avoiding passive voice. And that is kind of a big one in general. Really, the voice you choose to tell the story through, be it passive, active, future, or some other, really it's a stylistic choice. It's one of those things, if you pick one, you need to stick with it throughout the entire story. You can't be changing your passive or active stance, willy-nilly. It's not going to sound good in the end product. But by picking one and sticking to it, you're going to have better luck. The other reason people hate so much on passive voice is You want every word or every action of the story to drive the story. If you are telling passive tense all the time, it feels like you're holding back, and that's minimizing the ability to push the story forward. By simply eliminating passive voice and telling the story through an active perspective, you are going to drive the story just through the sheer matter of words. It goes in with pacing, which is another thing that the showing versus telling does. It is all about controlling the pacing of your story. Let's say you have a character who ends up as a prisoner type situation. That part of a story is typically going to be slower paced. The author should want the reader to feel like they are being held back, they're confined. It's moving slower because the character is, in fact, they're a prisoner. They are not out free on their own, so therefore the story should feel held back a little bit. Whereas an action scene, it's going to be boom, 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 fast pace, basically throughout the entire action sequence until you get back to a slower setting. And it's all about the pacing and the highs and lows of how you keep your story going and keeping the reader interested at the same time. But I am going to call that for this video. I need to get some writing done this evening. I've had a pretty busy day around the house and going out and running some errands and whatnot. Anyway, we will talk back to you tomorrow, and you guys have a good evening. Goodbye.